The CEO of the Motor Trade Association in WA is Neil Lefebvre. Good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. I wonder if I can ask you firstly, with what is going on globally, do you think we're seeing a bit of a change in our fuel cycle? I mean, it's Tuesday, but the prices are not coming down.
Yeah, look, there's definitely been a certain amount of panic buying in recent times, which is becoming one of those self-fulfilling cycles. So I attended the Fuel Security Roundtable last week, and certainly in the preceding weeks, there'd been about 4 times the usual amount of demand at the fuel pump.
Yes. And so were you pretty happy with what came out of that roundtable meeting in terms of trying to get more supply into the areas, particularly regionally, that really need it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a really pragmatic process that we went through. What was clear at that time, and it's coming up to about a week ago, there was no disruption in the shipments of fuel coming into the country. There'd been 18 deliveries already in this month and 33 boats on the water heading this way. And a big focus on how we ensure that there's the fuel getting out into the regions, because it's the regions that seem to have been most affected by that spike in demand.
Just on the prices, though, and I'll get onto these tips in just a moment about making the fuel go further, but just in terms of the prices, I think a lot of us have the scepticism around the minute this conflict broke out, the petrol prices all the way over here in Western Australia on the other side of the world magically seem to rise very quickly. Why does that happen? How aren't they still using the supply of fuel that they paid less for? They don't need to jack it up immediately, do they?
Well, look, hearing differing pieces of commentary about that, and all I've got to go on is what I'm hearing directly from people like Consumer Protection and the ACCC, who are monitoring these things really closely. And they're suggesting that the prices are still tracking in line with the net fuel costs coming through. So they're not seeing at the moment any signs of price gouging, and hopefully that is something they'll be really alert to.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, they keep saying they're not seeing evidence of that yet. There is Consumer Protection here in WA, the ACCC nationally, both watching all this stuff like hawks. So we'll keep you posted on any developments there at 6:22 on 102.5 ABC Perth. This is Neil Lefebvre from the Motor Trade Association here in WA. Neil, let's get on to these tips then. I tell you what, the first comments from listeners coming through about making your fuel go further is not to drive at all. I'm getting a whole lot of messages saying people are resorting to bike riding and public transport, and that is not a silly idea.
Yeah, look, I'm a culprit of that, despite working in the motoring industry. I'm a keen cyclist, so I often cycle to work. But when it comes to driving a car, I think there's probably three common sense areas to focus on. And the first is around driving smoothly, so not tackling your daily commute like you're behind a Formula One car, accelerating fast and braking hard. So there's a study that was done in the US a few years ago that suggested that kind of spirited driving could use 30 to 40% more fuel. So I would say keep calm and drive smoothly would be the first of those pieces of advice.
Yeah.
And certainly if you're on a freeway where speeds allow, fuel efficiency tests on vehicles over the years have been conducted around that 90 kilometres an hour. So that's obviously a kind of an optimum point for efficiency.
Okay, so be as efficient as you can. Don't be too aggressive with the accelerating and the braking. That's your first one. What about the weight that you're carrying in the boot or in the car? That's a common one as well. Does that have much of an impact?
Look, so I would bring that in with a bunch of other things that I would describe as marginal gains on the efficiency of your car and fuel that you can manage. So certainly, we know SUVs and utes are very popular in WA and right around the country. And if you've got excessive weight sitting in the backs of your boot that you put something in there to take to or from Bunnings and forgotten about, now's probably the time to take that out. Yeah. Marginal gains. Aerodynamics is another area, and you wouldn't really think you can impact the aerodynamics of your car. But another popular thing, and certainly coming up to Easter, is rooftop tents. We see a lot of those on cars around at the moment. Yeah. And the drag they create can account for about 10% increase in your fuel consumption.
Really? That's interesting.
So if you haven't got a trip away planned too soon, worth considering taking that off. And then the other areas are obviously things like the rolling resistance that comes through your tyres. So really marginal gains, but keeping your tyres at the optimum pressure to reduce your rolling resistance, and obviously using the right fuel as well.
Okay, I was just going to ask you about that one. So can you elaborate on that? When you say use the right fuel, different vehicles have different recommendations for the fuel. I have always sort of subscribed to the theory that it doesn't make much difference. Am I wrong?
Well, there's definitely recommendations that come with each manufacturer for a car about the type of fuel you should have in it. My son's a bit of an enthusiast with his car. He keeps on putting 98 in it, the most expensive. But I reckon he's probably not doing that right now. So if your car says put in 95, 95 is what you should put in. You might be putting in 98, but probably is now the time to reconsider that and just go with the manufacturer's recommendation.
Absolutely. Or 91 though? Is that okay to use if it says 95 or 98?
I would always advise sticking to the manufacturer's recommendation on these things. So they've optimised those engines around the type of fuel. And that probably comes on to the third point I would raise around how to get your car operating most efficiently is if you've got a service due anytime soon is to keep your car serviced. It might be tempting at these times of rising fuel prices to think hard about your timing of your services, but the servicing of your car will get its engine running and firing as smoothly as possible. So it's probably a best bit of money you can spend on ensuring you've got a nice fuel-efficient car.
That is a really interesting point, Neil, because, when everything's going up the way it is, to hand over, I don't know, $400, $500, whatever your service ends up costing you is really tough to do. But you reckon that would be worth it? That would save you more when you're paying over $100 for a tank of fuel. It might make it more efficient?
I haven't done the calculations on whether you'll get the immediate return, but certainly that long-term return. It's all about having an optimised car that's running as smoothly and efficiently as you can.
All right. Look, can I just summarise this with you? Because I'm taking some notes as you're talking and I just want to get the best information I possibly can across this morning. So you reckon your first point was about not accelerating and braking too aggressively, driving as smoothly as you can. We touched on the weight in the car. We touched on the tyre pressure, using the right fuel. What about when you're driving, what about things like cruise control? And when you talk about avoiding the accelerating and the braking, if you're on cruise control, does that help?
Yeah, cruise control definitely does. And there's been plenty of studies that show how that can really help with that fuel efficiency of keeping a nice steady pace. But of course, if you're out in the country with cruise control, the things to always watch there is when you're out of the flats and you start to hit hills, you can find your engine labouring and shifting down gears to keep up with the pace for going up and down those hills. So certainly a lot of people will still keep an eye on what's going on and maybe click out of cruise control and take some manual control in those situations. So cruise control doesn't mean you can switch off. Still got to pay attention, but will definitely make for a nice, efficient drive.
Thank you so much for all those tips. I really appreciate it. One final question before I let you go. Do you reckon we're going to see more people moving towards EVs given the price of fuel?
Well, look, that's a fantastic question. Certainly our membership base is giving us a lot of feedback on the increasing interest for EVs and other fuel-efficient cars, so plug-in hybrid electric vehicles and hybrids. That's great to see, but one of the challenges as well for WA is at a national level, the consideration for EVs amongst the WA consumers is the lowest of any of the metro centres. So Sydney, Melbourne, far higher consideration for EVs. So certainly keen to see the government look at some of their subsidies at the moment and, hopefully sustain some of the subsidies they've had in place, which have helped the uptake of EVs. So about 50% of the EVs on the road at the moment are through fleet buyers and people with novated leases. So people are being encouraged to break into that new technology, and we need a little bit of encouragement.
Neil, thank you again for all of that. Neil Lefebvre from the Motor Trade Association.